When I told my husband Ethan I'd lost my job, his reaction wasn't what I expected. No flicker of concern crossed his face, no trace of shock. Instead, his jaw tightened and his eyes blazed with anger. "Figures," he spat, slamming his laptop shut on the oak dining table. "You've always thought you're smarter than everyone else. Maybe this'll knock you down a peg." I stood rooted to the living room floor, still in my blazer, clutching my purse straps as if they could anchor me. I'd played this moment out in my mind a dozen times, picturing Ethan wrapping me in a reassuring hug, promising we'd navigate this together. But this wasn't that moment. This wasn't that man. The truth? I hadn't been fired. I'd been promoted, a surprise after years of grinding in the marketing department. My work finally recognized with a corner office and a raise. But as I walked home through the crisp Seattle evening, doubts gnawed at me. Ethan had grown distant lately, his temper sharper, his attention elsewhere. What if my success, out-earning him, stung his pride? His upbringing in a traditional Oregon family, where men were the breadwinners, loomed large. His mother's voice, preaching about a man's role as the pillar of the home, often echoed in our conversations. His reaction confirmed my fears. "You've put us in a real mess, Lauren," he shouted, pacing the hardwood floor. "How are we supposed to cover the mortgage now?" He didn't ask what happened or how I felt. He just kept railing, calling me a liability, accusing me of coasting while he built things that mattered at his construction firm. I stayed silent, not out of guilt, but because my throat seized up, my body instinctively guarding the truth. If I'd blurted out my promotion, my salary now dwarfing his, I might have missed what came next. The cracks in our marriage, long hidden, were starting to show. That night, I retreated to the bathroom, letting the shower's scalding water burn away the sting of Ethan's words. His accusations, my supposed uselessness, my paper-pushing job, looped in my mind. I barely registered the rest of the evening. Ethan slept on the couch without a word, leaving me staring at the bedroom ceiling, my thoughts spiraling. There had been signs, I realized, ones I'd brushed off for too long. Ethan's late nights at the office, his phone now perpetually locked and face down, the way he dodged my gaze during conversations. Even our Saturday morning pancake ritual, a tradition since our early days in Portland, had faded with half-hearted excuses. Next time, he'd mutter, shrugging. I'd chalked it up to stress. His firm was overseeing a massive redevelopment project downtown, the tangle of deadlines and pressure. I wanted to believe that was all it was, because the alternative, that the man I'd loved for a decade was slipping away, was too raw to face. But one moment, 2 months earlier, kept replaying in my head. I'd come home early from work, our team having crushed a product launch. I planned to surprise Ethan with his favorite steak dinner and a bottle of Merlot, hoping to rekindle the spark we'd lost. Slipping quietly into our Capitol Hill home, I heard his voice from the hallway, low and deliberate, unlike the warm tone I knew. "No, she doesn't know anything yet," he said into his phone, his words clipped. "Just give me a bit more time." A pause, then a laugh. Cold, unfamiliar, slicing through me. It wasn't the Ethan I'd married. It was someone else entirely. I stood in the hallway, gripping the doorframe, my pulse hammering in my ears. Ethan was talking about me. I was certain of it. The phone conversation was muffled, no voice from the other end, just his cold, measured words. "She doesn't suspect a thing," he said, followed by a pause. "We just need a little longer." Then came that laugh, sharp, detached, not the worn chuckle I once loved. My chest tightened, as if a sting had lodged there. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Then Ethan emerged from the bedroom, saw me, and flashed a casual smile, kissing my cheek like it was any ordinary Thursday. I forced a smile back, retreating to the kitchen to chop vegetables for dinner. But something inside me fractured. A silent, invisible crack spread fast beneath my composed exterior. For that moment, I watched him differently. I noticed the subtle shifts, his reluctance to discuss our future, the irritation in his voice when I asked about his day. The small lies that slipped out, unnoticed by him, but glaring to me. I wasn't paranoid, my instincts were screaming, and I was finally listening. It was a quiet grief, mourning a marriage I'd thought was alive while it slowly withered. I told myself to wait, to gather more evidence, until that night after my fabricated firing shattered the last of my denial. Something bigger was unfolding, something I hadn't dared imagine. But I was about to uncover it, and there'd be no turning back. It was just past 2 p.m. when the front door creaked open. I'd called in sick to work, needing space to think, to piece together the puzzle of Ethan's distance. He still believed I was jobless, broken, a shadow of myself. He had no idea I was still employed, let alone promoted, now overseeing the marketing team with a salary that outstripped his. I used the day to steady myself, to plan quietly. Then I heard two voices, not a colleague or a friend. Ethan's mother, Diane. My stomach knotted. I slipped into the hallway, lingering just out of sight behind the guest room door. Eavesdropping felt wrong, but their casual tone in the middle of a weekday set my nerves on edge. "Everything's going as planned," Ethan said, his voice carrying a smug satisfaction. "She told me she got fired yesterday. Completely crushed, just like you said she'd be." I clapped a hand over my mouth, stifling a gasp. Diane's voice, sharp and familiar, cut through. "Finally," she said, almost gloating. "She's got no choice now. She'll have to agree to our terms." My knees buckled. I braced myself against the wall, my heartbeat drowning out their words. "She's entirely dependent on me now," Ethan continued. "Selling the house will be easy." Diane let out a smug chuckle. "I told you she wasn't right for you, Ethan. Too driven, too independent. Do you think she'd have stayed if it wasn't for your father's house?" The words hit like a blow to the chest. That house, our home in Seattle's Queen Anne neighborhood, was where we'd built a life for 10 years. I'd poured my heart into it, my savings, my dreams. Now they were plotting to sell it, as if I were a tenant they'd outmaneuvered. "Don't start, Mom," Ethan sighed. "We've been over this." "And what about Sarah?" Diane pressed. "When will you tell her it's time?" Sarah, a name sliced through me like ice. Sarah Mitchell, Jake's girlfriend before his death. Jake, Ethan's older brother, had died in a car accident 3 years ago. Sarah vanished after the funeral, or so I thought. I had no idea Ethan had stayed in touch, let alone. "She's ready," Ethan said, his tone softening. "The baby's doing well. Sarah says he's growing fast, looks just like Jake." My stomach lurched. "I'll adopt him once the divorce is finalized," Ethan went on, as if discussing a contract. "He'll be my son." "Our son." Diane's voice turned syrupal. "Sarah will be thrilled when she hears the house is up for sale. She's waited long enough." My vision blurred, my ears rang. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a calculated plan to erase me. They weren't just leaving me, they were rewriting my life. How long had this been brewing? How many smiles, how many touches had been lies? My husband wasn't just cheating, he was orchestrating my replacement. "I always knew Sarah was the one for you," Diane said, her tone dripping with approval. "You two are perfect. It's a pity you met her too late after marrying that one." That one. Not Lauren, not his wife, just an obstacle to be discarded. I bit my knuckle to stay silent, my world collapsing around me. My body trembled, but I couldn't tear myself away. I needed every word, every detail of their plan. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Ethan murmured. "We still need to ensure Lauren doesn't fight the divorce." "She won't," Diane replied, her voice brimming with confidence. "Not if you play it smart. Remind her she's got nothing. No job, no savings. She'll crumble." My fists clenched, nails digging into my palms. They thought I was helpless, cornered. But I wasn't. Not yet. Not even close. "What if she doesn't back down?" Diane asked, a hint of doubt creeping in. "What if she gets a lawyer?" Ethan's voice turned chillingly calm. "Then we use the infidelity angle." I nearly staggered back. "Infidelity? What infidelity?" Diane echoed my thoughts. "Doesn't matter," Ethan said. "I've got photos from that marketing conference she attended 2 years ago. Just her with some coworkers. But they can be spun to look compromising. Enough to plant doubt." "You're clever, Ethan," Diane said, her tone dripping with pride. "Just like your father." He wasn't finished. "If that fails, we'll say she leaked sensitive client data. She handled confidential files at work, brought them home sometimes. I'll claim I caught her trying to sell trade secrets." My knees gave out and I sank to the floor, hands icy. The man who once held me through a fever, who laughed as we painted our bedroom sage green, was now plotting to ruin me. He'd lie in court, accuse me of crimes I'd never committed, all to clear the way for Sarah and a child who wasn't his. Sarah, the soft-spoken woman I vaguely recalled from Jake's memorial, her grief seeming genuine then. I never imagined she'd re-enter our lives as my replacement, the mother of the child Ethan planned to claim. "How's the baby?" Ethan asked, his voice suddenly warm, almost joyful. "Thriving," Diane replied, beaming. "Sarah says he's growing fast. Looks just like Jake. Same eyes. Same smile. You'll see soon." The room spun. They were building a new family. Ethan, Sarah, the baby, and Diane, the orchestrator. In their minds, I was already erased, a formality to be dispatched. "I'll tell her tonight," Ethan said. "She's raw from losing her job. It's the perfect time. I'll play the sympathetic husband, say it's best for both of us. Offer her some cash to walk away." Diane snorted. "Lean into the pity. Make her feel like dead weight. Women like her always fold." My lip bled from biting it, but a faint smile flickered. They didn't know I hadn't been fired. I'd been promoted. Their carefully laid plan was already unraveling, and they were clueless. I stayed crouched behind the door long after their voices faded, the couch creaking as Ethan settled in, the front door clicking shut behind Diane. Hugging my knees, my heart pounded so loudly I feared it would betray me. My body was frozen, but my mind burned with clarity. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a declaration of war. I'd stumbled into it unprepared, but I wouldn't be a silent casualty. That night, I avoided Ethan. He acted as if nothing had happened, sipping whiskey and watching a Seahawks game, his face a mask of practiced neutrality. I couldn't meet his eyes, afraid I'd shatter the facade I needed to maintain, at least for now. In bed, I lay rigid, my back to him, listening to his steady breathing as he slept, oblivious to the storm he'd ignited. Before dawn, I slipped out of the house. I didn't head to the office. Instead, I went to the storage closet in our garage, where we kept years of documents, tax records, contracts, receipts. I needed proof that our Queen Anne home wasn't just Ethan's inheritance. My bonuses had funded the new water heater. My savings paid for the kitchen's custom cabinets I'd designed. I gathered bank statements, invoices, anything that showed my investment in our life. Stuffing the papers into a duffel bag, I drove across town to the only person I trusted, Kate, my best friend since college. She'd always seen through Ethan's charm, warning me years ago about his temper. Now I needed her clarity more than ever. Kate Harper wasn't just a coworker, she was my rock. For years we'd propped each other up through late-night deadlines at the marketing firm, sharing black coffee and inside jokes. She knew my quirks, my failed attempt to foster a scruffy alley cat, my obsession with hazelnut lattes, and crucially, she'd never betrayed my trust. When I showed up at her Capitol Hill apartment, duffel bag stuffed with documents, she didn't pry. She just studied my face for a moment and stepped aside. "I need a favor," I whispered, my voice tight. "Say no more," Kate replied, her tone steady but warm. In her cluttered kitchen, I spread the documents across her table, bank statements, invoices, proof of my contributions to the house. "If anything happens to me, if I stop answering calls, get these to my lawyer." Her eyebrow arched, but she stayed silent. "I'm not paranoid," I added, catching the worry in her eyes. "I just can't take risks right now." Kate nodded, her expression softening. "You're freaking me out a little, Lauren, but I've got you, whatever you need." I exhaled, a sliver of tension easing. I hadn't told her about Sarah, the baby, or Ethan's plot. Not yet. But she sensed the gravity, and for now, that was enough. Driving home, I passed Green Lake, where Ethan and I used to jog on Sundays, his hand in mine, his smile making me feel like the center of his universe. That man was gone. The one waiting at home now was a stranger wearing his face, and tonight, that stranger would try to erase me. When I walked through the front door that evening, I knew it was coming. The conversation Ethan had rehearsed. The final act of his betrayal. His face betrayed it. Forced concern, shoulders slumped just enough to seem burdened. Ethan Carter was ready to play the compassionate husband while dismantling my life. "Hey," he said, his voice low, deliberate. "We need to talk." I offered a weary smile, just enough to keep him confident, and dropped my bag by the door. "Sure. What's up?" He gestured to the living room, staged like a scene from a drama. The lights were dimmed. 2 glasses of Pinot Noir sat on the coffee table, and a fro blanket was artfully draped over the couch. as if this were a gentle, mutual decision. I sat. He took the armchair across from me, hands clasped, letting out a sigh so rehearsed, I nearly smirked. "Lauren," he began, "I've been thinking about us, about where we're at. I think we've drifted apart." I stared at the wine glass, nodding faintly, letting him think I was fragile. "I don't want this to get messy," he continued, leaning forward, his tone heavy with faux sincerity. "No lawyers, no courts. I just think it's time we admit this marriage isn't working." He sounded heartbroken, like he was the one suffering. "With you out of work now," he added softly, "maybe this is a chance for a fresh start for both of us." My stomach churned, but I let my lip quiver just enough. "You're saying divorce?" He nodded, sipping his wine as if sealing a deal. "Yeah, but amicable. I don't want to fight. I'll help you get back on your feet, a place to stay, some money to settle in." I tilted my head, playing the part of the broken wife. "You'd do that for me?" "Of course," he said, hand over his heart, the picture of a savior. "I care about you, Lauren. We're just not right for each other anymore. We've changed." He paused for effect, then added, "The house is legally mine, Dad's inheritance, but I'll be fair. I'll give you a settlement, enough for rent for a few months." I blinked, letting out a shaky breath. "How much?" He named a figure, pitiful, a fraction of what I'd poured into our home. But I didn't react. I just stared at him, seeing the man I'd loved for a decade morph into a stranger before my eyes. "I thought we'd fight harder," I murmured, letting my voice waver. "I thought we were stronger." Ethan reached for my hand, his touch mechanical, like an actor tired of his lines. "I'm sorry, Lauren, but this is the best way forward, I promise." I gave him what he wanted, a slow nod, eyes glistening, lips pressed in defeat. "Okay," I whispered. "I'll think about it." His shoulders relaxed, a flicker of relief crossing his face. But behind my trembling facade, my mind was racing, building a case. He wanted no lawyers, but I was already planning to hire the best in Seattle. The next morning, I left before Ethan stirred, still sprawled on the couch under a blanket, hiding from the consequences of his schemes. No note, no goodbye, just silence. Let him wonder. Downtown Seattle was stirring as I entered a brick building near Pike Place Market, where Abigail Turger's law office nestled between a coffee shop and a bookstore. The hallway smelled of roasted beans and old paper. I sat in the waiting room, nerves buzzing, rehearsing my words. When Abigail called my name, I walked in and laid out the essentials. Not the full betrayal, not Sarah or the baby, but enough. The inherited house, my financial contributions, Ethan's push for a quick, cheap divorce with an insulting settlement. Abigail listened, her face calm but sharp, her pen dancing across a legal pad. "You've been married 10 years?" she asked, voice precise. 12, I corrected. 10 legally, 2 before. She nodded, jotting a note. "Children? None. Proof of contributions to the home? Receipts, invoices, bank statements, furniture, renovations, the works." She leaned back, hands clasped. "Lauren, you have a strong case. But if we proceed, it won't be clean. He'll fight dirty." I met her gaze. "He already is." A glint of respect flashed in her eyes. "Then let's get to work." Stepping outside, the Seattle air felt crisp, lighter. The weight on my chest lifted slightly. I wasn't alone anymore. I had a strategist in my corner. Someone who saw the battlefield clearly. I went straight to the office, no more hiding. Striding through the glass doors of the marketing firm, I greeted my team, settled at my desk, and pulled up the department dashboard with focus. Ethan thought I was jobless, defeated, but I was thriving, my promotion empowering me to lead with confidence. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Hope the job search went okay. Let me know when you're ready to talk next steps." Next steps. I stifled a laugh. He had no clue I'd already taken mine. I replied, "Will do." That afternoon, I met with my team, reviewed quarterly targets, scheduled one-on-ones, and greenlit a new client campaign. I was sharp, unshakable. As I left the office at dusk, the Seattle skyline glowing, I felt a shift inside me. The woman who'd crumbled in the hallway, trembling as her husband plotted her erasure, was gone. In her place was someone new, focused, fierce, ready. When I got home, Ethan was in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, arms crossed, trying to look casual, but the twitch in his jaw betrayed him. He was nervous. "Hey," he said like we were discussing takeout. "Got a minute?" I hung my coat deliberately, turning to face him. "Sure." He nodded toward the living room, the same stage setup. Couch, wine, fake solemnity. He thought his first performance had sealed my surrender. "I've been thinking," he began, "we should finalize things soon. The divorce, the paperwork, so we can both move on." I nodded, keeping my face soft. "Okay." He blinked, surprised. "So you're on board?" "I'm not fighting the divorce," I said, voice gentle, "but I want to understand what's fair." "I've spoken with someone," I said, my voice steady but soft. Ethan froze. "Someone? A lawyer?" His eyes narrowed, a flash of unease breaking his calm facade. "Why do you need a lawyer? I'm offering a generous settlement. We can handle this ourselves." I tilted my head, keeping my tone even. "You said the house is legally yours, right?" "It is," he shot back, too quickly. "We've lived there for over a decade. I've invested money, receipts, bank statements. I just want what's fair." He laughed, a sharp, defensive sound. "Lauren, you're blowing this out of proportion. You lived there. That's not ownership." "I paid for the kitchen remodel," I said quietly. "The bathroom fixtures, the appliances, all from my accounts. I want that acknowledged." Ethan stood, pacing the living room. "I don't want this to get ugly." "Then don't insult me with a number that barely covers 3 months' rent." He spun toward me, and for the first time, his mask slipped. Anger, panic, raw and unfiltered, flickered across his face. "You're being unreasonable." "No," I said calmly. "I'm being smart. You taught me that, remember? Plan ahead, protect your assets." His jaw twitched, eyes darting, as if recalculating who I was. "You really want to do this? Lawyers? You think that's smart?" "I think it's necessary," I replied. "You wanted fairness. This is how it works." He didn't respond immediately, just stared, grappling with the realization that I wasn't the fragile wife he'd expected to collapse. I was a problem now, a threat. "What do you want?" he muttered. "Not half the house," I said. "Just what I put in, and maybe a little more for the years you spent lying." His jaw clenched, but he didn't deny it. His silence was confirmation enough, and in that moment, I saw fear in his eyes. He'd underestimated me, and now he knew it. The divorce finalized 6 weeks later, far from the quiet exit Ethan had envisioned. He dragged it out, once he realized I wouldn't roll over. His lawyer, a smug colleague he'd likely boasted about to Diane, tried every tactic, but Abigail was sharper, relentless. Armed with every receipt, bank transfer, and signature I'd provided, she ensured Ethan couldn't claim what wasn't his. In the end, I secured a fair settlement, not just financially but as recognition of my years building a home, a life, before he torched it. The final meeting was in a stark conference room in downtown Seattle. Sarah wasn't there, but her presence lingered, a shadow waiting to step into my place. Ethan avoided my gaze, signing the papers in silence. As I tucked the pen into my bag, I looked at him. "You always underestimated me." He didn't respond, but his expression, regret, disbelief, or both, said enough. His script for my life had unraveled. I moved into a cozy apartment overlooking the Puget Sound. It wasn't grand, but it was mine. The first night, I left every light on, not out of fear, but because I could. No one to call me dramatic, no one to label me a burden. Just quiet, hard-earned peace. Word trickled back through Kate that Ethan and Sarah were struggling. Their idyllic vision, built on lies, was cracking. Money was tight. Raising a child wasn't the fairy tale they'd imagined, and Diane's meddling couldn't fix it. Sarah, it seemed, didn't fit the mold Diane had crafted. None of it surprised me. Lies don't hold up forever. I don't dwell on them. I don't scroll social media or stew in resentment. I've rebuilt, deliberately, on my terms. My job is solid, my reputation strong. Some nights I eat alone, but solitude isn't loneliness, it's healing. I've started kickboxing on weekends, rediscovered poetry, and call my sister regularly. I'm even writing again, a passion buried since college. Pieces of me I thought were lost were merely hidden, smothered by years of shrinking to fit Ethan's ego. Now I claim all the space I need. If there's one lesson I've carved into my bones, it's this. Being underestimated is a dangerous gift. When you rise, when you fight back, no one sees it coming. Ethan thought I'd shatter. Instead, I became unbreakable.